Did you really think I'd fake that thumbnail? How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Robert Arms. My name's Rob. I'm the host of this channel. Today, we're going to be going over some of the weapons used in the classic 1984 film, Red Dawn, starring Patrick Swayze, Charlie Sheen, and of course, Leah Thompson. And no, we're not going to talk about that shitty 2012 remake. The film depicts a horrifying alternate reality of 1984, where an emboldened Soviet Union and Warsaw Pact launches a conventional and nuclear strike on the United States after suffering a massive famine and NATO dissolving itself due to lack of its own resolve, and its unwillingness to engage in yet a third world war, leaving the United States alone to face invasion. Well, except for China.
Last I heard, there were a billion screaming Chinamen.
There were.
The film follows a group of high school students whose lives were turned upside down due to the war being brought to their own home, being forced into a position where they have to fight back with the use of guerrilla warfare tactics. It should be noted that this was the first Hollywood film to be given a PG-13 rating for the amount of violence that was depicted on screen. Though they were working with a low budget at the time, acquiring Soviet weaponry, gear, and equipment was very hard to do due to the embargoes that were placed during the Cold War. This resulted in the production crew to come up with its own Soviet tanks, weapons, and gear, and it looked so accurate that allegedly the CIA even sent agents to inquire about how the production crew got their hands on Soviet tanks depicted in the film, when in reality they were all custom made for the movie. Really, what made this film so popular yet so controversial for so long was this depiction of American citizens fighting against a foreign invader with the use of the Second Amendment. The movie played on the fears of the American people that during the height of the Cold War, a Soviet invasion was imminent and that people should be mindful that they ought to be prepared. That's why when you see a foreign invasion of any nation, even in the modern day like Ukraine, often many people compare it to the film. Though in reality, the Soviets were never capable of actually invading the continental United States. It's probably because they're not capable of understanding our love for freedom and McDonald's hamburgers. That's not an endorsement. You should exercise. Don't get McDonald's. If I'm not mistaken, there was a scene in the movie where a Cuban commander talked to a Soviet commander inquiring about looking for 4473 background check forms at local gun stores so that they could find the local gun owners in the area to make sure that they can securely acquire them so that they don't hand them off to local partisans. One of the many flaws of the federal background check system, other than that its entire existence is an infringement on the Constitution.
Correct!
Now, when picking all these firearms for this video, I used the Hollywood Firearm Database website, which I'll link below in the description so that you can learn a little bit more about the other weapons that were featured in the movie that I don't have here today. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. First off, we got the Remington 870 Wingmaster Sawed-Off, chambered in 12 gauge. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is clearly a short-barreled shotgun, when in reality is, you don't know your laws. This is classified as a firearm, which is a non-NFA item. That means this firearm has a barrel length of 14 inches that was manufactured from the factory and has a pistol grip length that extends the entire overall length of the weapon over 26 inches, making it a different category. These can be acquired at your local gun store, but check your local laws, they might not let you have them. This weapon started its life in Red Dawn as a Remington 870 Wingmaster hunting shotgun that was acquired by the group of teenage partisans and used it throughout the film. At some point during the film, one of the characters saws down the barrel, which in reality they didn't actually saw off a barrel and commit a felony. They simply just swapped the barrels off screen so that they could depict it with a shorter barrel. In the film, the shotgun was used to devastating effect at close quarters range and ambushes, leaving devastating blows against anybody who was on the wrong end of this thing. And honestly, makes for a pretty badass setup, if you ask me. The Remington 870 was already, and still is, a very popular shotgun in the United States due to its ruggedness, reliability, versatility, and mostly its cost. It remains a very popular weapon for hunting, sporting, and combat use, and it's no surprise that it would end up in the hands of the kids fighting against the Russians in Red Dawn. Up next, the Ruger M77 chambered in .30-06. The Ruger M77 was used by Patrick Swayze's character, Jed Edgert, throughout the film, and there's no way I would leave it out of this video. The M77 was a very popular bolt-action hunting rifle during the 1980s, and it's no surprise that it would pop up in this film. Its action is designed after the Mauser 98 and the Pre-64 Winchester Model 70, using an extended extractor claw to use for more controlled feed of rounds while cycling. In other words, this is a more traditional, expensive bolt-action rifle to machine and manufacture. The guy who designed this rifle, by the way, was a guy that went by the name of Jim Sullivan, who happened to also work on the AR-15 with Eugene Stoner, and he also invented the Ruger Mini 14. So, if that doesn't tell you about how well designed this weapon is, I don't know what would. Its simple fire controls and its sleek profile made it an excellent weapon of choice for Jet's character and his situation, leaving those commies absolutely nowhere to hide. Let's talk about some military firearms. Up next, the FN-FAL. This .308 short-stroke gas piston battle rifle is regarded as the right arm of the free world, being one of the most widely issued firearms in the NATO alliance. In the film, it's depicted being wielded by the Cuban and Nicaraguan armies. Now, one may ask, why would the right arm of the free world be in the hands of the commies? Like I've said earlier, the right arm of the free world was one of the most widely issued firearms in the NATO alliance, but it was also heavily used by many nations that weren't part of NATO, like a lot of the countries in Central America, which, in the lore of Red Dawn, actually fell to communism. Particularly Nicaragua, its army swelled to over 500,000 men. In regards to the Cubans, when Castro's regime began after the fall of the Batista regime, Batista happened to order a large batch of FALs to get shipped to Cuba prior to his regime collapsing. Now, though an embargo would be placed against the Cubans by NATO, Fidel Castro was more than happy to pay for the shipment of FALs, which is why we probably see the weapon depicted in the film. Either way, it's no surprise that it would end up in the hands of anybody during a Third World War scenario, because this is one of the most reliable and battle-proven weapons in the world. Before we get to the end of this list, I would like to talk a little bit about the channel. I've been noticing a steady rise of subscribers recently, and I greatly appreciate that you are all here enjoying this new content. With that being said, I'd like to continue this endeavor a little bit further, which is why I'm going to start a Patreon for this channel, and whenever I announce, any of you will be free to be able to donate so that we can continue making content for this channel and supporting the Second Amendment, which is ultimately why I created this channel in the first place. Any amount of donations that are sent to the new Patreon would be greatly appreciated and directed solely to creating content for this channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the end of the list. It would be impossible for me to be able to film this video without this last weapon on our list. There's only one weapon I know of that could be a symbol of freedom and tyranny at the same time. The AK-47, or in this case, the AKM. Wolverines! This 7.62x39 assault rifle was issued to the Soviet Red Army from 1949 to 1974 and is one of the most widely produced firearms in history, being issued to many of the Warsaw Pact nations and many of their communist allies. Now, in the time period of Red Dawn, the Soviet Red Army had already replaced many of its AKMs with the newer AK-74 rifle chambered in 5.45x39mm. Though you will notice in Red Dawn that many of the characters and soldiers in the film are using AKMs. This was for good reason. Due to the embargo set during the Cold War against the Soviet Union, it was impossible to be able to import AK-74s to be used in the movie, and that goes for kind of any Soviet product for that matter. As I said earlier, the film's producers and prop department had to get real creative about how they can accurately portray Soviet soldiers and their AKs as closely to resemble their real-life counterparts. Now, the majority of the AKMs depicted in Red Dawn were actually Egyptian Mahdi's that were a commercially available imported AK for the film producers to use. Now, in a World War III scenario taking place in 1984, I don't doubt at all that the Soviets would probably more than likely field their older AKMs, like this one in my hands, to be used on the front lines of a war taking place in America, and it would absolutely be a favorite of a bunch of angry teenage partisans. Anyways, that wraps it up for this video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also follow my Instagram for any more updates regarding the channel at Robert Arms Official. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I hope to see y'all in the next video.